Got a question for you.
Sure.
What happens after you die? You ever thought about it?
I just turn to ashes.
What about your soul?
I mean, I don't believe in souls, so.
Let's say you're right. Let's say you die, you turn to ash, you got nothing to worry about. But what if you're wrong? What if you die and you end up in hell with no escape? Wouldn't that be tragic?
Well, that would be if they weren't the fact that other religions also talk about hell.
Well,
So how do you know that yours is the right one?
they can't all be right at the same time.
Right, that doesn't mean that yours is the right one.
There
Right?
has to be one that's right and the others are wrong because they can't all be right at the
Right.
same time. Does that make
Right.
sense?
So you would be just as screwed as I am.
Not necessarily, because if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. I end up wherever. But if I'm right, I end up in heaven. That's what the
Well,
Bible
actually, it does
teaches.
matter because if you don't believe in the right hell, then you would also end up in hell too.
But they can't all be right at the same time. See, only one really is the source of truth. The rest are imitators.
Right, but if you pick the wrong one, then you're going to be just as much in trouble.
Yes,
So how
that's
do you know
why
the truth is right?
there's a couple of ways. Number one, you can pray and say, "Look, God, I want to know the truth. Which one is right? Show me the truth. And if you're true, show me." You can just be honest with God from your heart to God, and He'll show you. Second way is do research and find out which of the major religions are true and which is not. How do you know that the Bible is true, for instance? There's a couple of ways. Go on Google, type in Bible archaeology. If you type that in, you'll see there's all kinds of archaeology that confirms what the Bible is saying is true. Another way you can look at it is through Jesus. Was he an actual person that existed, a historical figure, or is it just made up? There's all kinds of resources for that. Did he actually live? Did he die? Did he resurrect? The other element is prophecy. Is what the Bible's saying true? There's hundreds of prophecies in the Bible and the Old Testament that talk about Jesus coming, living, dying, rising again. All those things happened. There's other prophecies talking about Israel coming back as a nation. There's all kinds of prophecies. If you just go on Google and type in "why is the Bible true," there's all kinds of websites about it.
Well,
If
yeah,
I
it's going to be from like mainly Christian websites, right? Obviously, they're going to say it's true.
There's a guy named Bart Ehrman. Have you ever heard of him before?
What's his name?
Bart Ehrman. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God, but guess what? He believes that Jesus actually lived and resurrected because he did research on it. He doesn't believe. He's not a Christian. He never became a Christian, but the historical evidence that he researched led him to know that those events actually did happen.
Right,
That's
people
one guy.
aren't disputing Jesus being a real person. We're just disputing your religion being true.
Not necessarily just that he's a real person, but he actually lived, died, and resurrected, and people witnessed that happen. That's a big deal. Because if he can either be a liar or a lunatic, or he can be telling the truth. And that's what his research led him to. I don't know
So, what makes the witnesses reliable?
what makes the witnesses reliable. Well,
Yeah.
that's a very good question. All the apostles, there was 12 of them, right? They lived with Jesus before he was basically from the beginning. They lived with him. They saw him die, and they saw him resurrect. And every single one of them, except for Judas, of course, that betrayed him, they all went around and dedicated their lives to spreading the gospel, and they all died terrible deaths, being tortured and in terrible ways, and they never recanted that. And because of that, Christianity spread rapidly. Now, if Jesus didn't really exist or whatever, and he was a liar, I really sincerely doubt that anybody would put their life on the line in such a way, let alone all 12 of them. That's a point that is made in there's a documentary called "Case for Christ" by Lee Strobel. It's on YouTube. You can look it up.
Yep, I've heard. But wait, none of the apostles have actually ever met Jesus, though.
The disciples, all 12 of them did. Yes, they were with him. Talking about
While he was alive, no, they never met Jesus.
that's not true. They all did. They were with him. That's what the gospel accounts are about.
Right, they're secondhand.
They're not secondhand. They're firsthand. They're written by him. John, you know the apostle John? He was the one that wrote the book of John. He's the one that died. He was the only one. He died on the Isle of Patmos or whatnot, but he was the one that was with Jesus as well. He wrote one of the accounts. All of them are.
So,
That's what
so
Kate's.
why did John say he never met Jesus then?
He didn't. That's a lie. That's what Case for Christ is all about by Lee Strobel. Have you ever seen it before?
Yeah, I've seen it before. There's an atheist who actually like debunks that whole thing back in the day.
Well, what the atheist is saying is not true, because John himself was with Jesus and he wrote that account. That's what the whole thing's about.
So how come he says up until now, don't think I ever really knew him. He is far more than his humble appearance ever bespoke. So
Okay.
why would he say that about Jesus if he met him then?
That's not the same John that's in the gospel. That's somebody else. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the scriptures. It's really interesting, and how you can know that the Bible, as compared to other ideas of God, are not true, so to say. Like, for instance, in the Quran, Allah says that He's the greatest of deceivers, but in the Bible, God says that He cannot lie. Now, the two can't be the same. They cannot be the same. They're opposites.
So yeah, if you look at yeah, Allah is the greatest of planners and Allah is the greatest of deceivers.
Yes.
That's what you're referencing, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But God cannot lie. He's the source of truth. The two cannot be the same. Let me ask you this. How do you think that the world came to be? What is your belief on that?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm not gonna say like that it's some sort of like higher power unless we have like evidence for that.
Here's the thing. There's four main views about how the world came to be. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, like which ones?
The four main views are: one is that the universe is an illusion. It's like the Matrix or something like that. And these are the views of Buddhism and Hinduism. You ever heard that before?
Yeah.
So the way that we can know that the universe is not an illusion is because in order to know what an illusion is, you have to compare it to something that is not. You have to compare it to reality. Like when you go to a magic show, you see someone pull a rabbit out of the hat, you're like, wow, that's amazing. But you know that that shouldn't happen because you know what reality is. That's why an illusion is so amazing. It impresses you. And that's how we can know that we're not living in an illusion, because you have to compare it to reality. You have to have a baseline, a standard to compare it to. That's why Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. That's where that all comes from. That's how we know that reality isn't an illusion. The second view is that the universe is eternal. It's always existed. The problem with that is we know that there's aging. We know that time is real. We know that things tend to go from order to disorder. There's what is it called, like radiation or something in the universe that shows that there was a time and there was a beginning. The third view is the Big Bang. It's the most famous view. Basically an energy explosion that happens and everything is created as we know it. The problem is always the same. It's first cause. What causes the energy to happen? Why did it explode? And the second problem with that is you don't get life from non-life. Basically, you don't get life from a fire or an energy ball. It has no consciousness. You don't get life from a rock, so to say. You have to have life from a life. That's how it always has worked. Living things come from living things, not from non-living things. That's always the problem with the Big Bang. The last view is the God view. Is something outside of time, space, and matter created time, space, and matter. See, we live inside of time, space, and matter. That's all that we know because we're physical, limited beings with spirits. But God is outside of those things. He's the creator. We're the created. See, he's not bound by time, space, or matter. And he's the one that created us. That's been the best explanation throughout history.
How do you know that?
How do we know what God is like?
No, how do you know God created the universe?
Well, we can know through observation, like when we observe the universe around us. Does that make sense?
People did that back then. People thought they assigned deities to things because they didn't get it. So what makes you any different?
Right. Well, we have to pinpoint around. We have to observe the universe around us and kind of pinpoint how do we know it's a God in the way that we know it. Well, first, we have to know that God has to be supernatural, meaning he's outside of nature. He created time and space, so he's outside of it. He's not limited by it. If something created time and space, it can't be inside time and space. It can't create itself. That makes sense?
Okay, but what makes, again, how do you know God created the time and space?
Because it didn't create itself. He's outside of it.
Okay, so how did God create time and space?
Well, he's supernatural. He's outside of time and space. The Bible says that he spoke it into existence. And then
Right. So how does that work? That you just say, "Oh, I want time and space," and poof, time and space like magic.
because he's
That's how it
God,
works.
because he's God, he can speak things into existence. He's the creator. He's beyond us. He's beyond our understanding. He has to be powerful in order to do that. He has to be exceedingly powerful. He has to be eternal, meaning self-existent. He's outside of time. A being like this. This is just observing the universe. He has to be able to be omnipresent, meaning that he created space, but he's not really limited by it. He has to be timeless and changeless. If he has to do that in order to be outside of time, because he
And
created.
surely God could have prevented Eve from eating that apple, then, right? If he has all the power, right?
Then
So
he would
why
have
did he
been.
let her eat?
Then he would have been creating robots, but he didn't. He created us with a free choice. He gave us the ability to choose whether to obey or disobey. See, that's the consequence, but it's also how love works. See, you don't create robots; they can't truly love you. They
But
have to be able
but
to
how is
choose.
it loving if you're setting them off into fiery brimstone? That's the opposite of being pretty loving.
Well, the Bible
So
says originally that hell was created for Satan and the demons. What happened was that Satan, the serpent, deceived Eve because he hated humanity, he hated God, and because of that, he tricked them. And when he tricked them, their soul was separated from God. So if they die in that separated state, then they'll end up in hell with him. But that wasn't the original intention. That's where Jesus comes in the whole redemption story. See, God knew all of this happened, and he made a plan to redeem us from that. He actually came and became part of the creation and died for our sins. He didn't have to do that. He could have just destroyed us all instantly. He's like, all right, this one that I created
yeah, he also
disobeyed
doesn't
me.
have to like setting people off in a fiery brimstone either.
That wasn't the original intention, but that's what Satan did when he tricked us. But that was the way. See, here's how hell works basically. You have light and you have darkness. The two cannot be together. So if you separate yourself in this life, and you will be separated forever from God in the next life. And that place of separation is a place of darkness and torment. It's the opposite of everything that God is. See, God is love, hell is hate. God is pleasure, hell is pain. All these different kind of things are the opposites. So if you separate yourself from God in this life and the next, and that would be the natural consequence of it. Does that make sense?
How is that anything akin to like an abusive relationship? That if you choose not to be with me, I'm gonna torture you.
Because an abusive relationship is between two humans. This is God, the creator, that loves you and gives you multiple chances. He reaches out to you throughout your whole life. That's kind of what life
An
is.
abusive partner could say the same thing, that they've given you multiple chances, but you didn't want to be with them, so they have to do this.
Yeah, but
Why does God?
they torment you in your life. They don't love you and reach out to you and help you. They see God is not a human. He's way different than us. He's outside of us. He's the source of love and life and truth. He gives us chances.
I mean, the abusive partner can claim they're doing it out of love. What makes God any different? He can claim he's doing it out of
Well,
love, right?
human beings are evil by nature. You know, we sin, we hurt each other, we do evil things. But God isn't like that. He's the source of love and life and truth. He's our creator. You know what I mean? Let me ask you this: how did you come to the point where you got this way towards God? Did you have a bad experience as a kid or anything? Did you have any religious
No,
experience?
I just see type what God is, and God is no way of loving God.
If your
The way in
understanding of
which,
God is wrong, would you want to know?
I mean, sure.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to show and explain to you. All these different ways that we can come to the conclusion. All those different things I was telling you about when you observe the universe. The reason why we know that the Bible is true is because the Bible most lines up with all those descriptions that we can observe from the universe. That's why I was telling you about them.
Right.
That's one way of coming to that conclusion. The other way I was telling you is through just from your heart to God, just pray and say, look, God, show me the truth. If you're real, show me. I want to know. I want to know the truth. And because God is the source of truth, He will show you. He will give you a way.
How do you know it's not a placebo effect? If you just like will something into existence, yeah, obviously you're gonna think it has something to do with like what you just did earlier, right?
Yes, if you think that way, but if something outside of you it demonstrates and shows you things that normally that you wouldn't have noticed, then I would say that would be an amazing thing. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They have dreams, they have things that happen in their life that they realize that they've been avoiding God their whole life, but then suddenly they have something that changes their life. And God is
Well,
patient with
yeah.
us. He gives us a chance.
Well, yeah, because when people are going through something, yeah, people's first instinct is to turn to religion to help them.
Right, because humans are weak, we're limited, but God is not. And that weakness God can use to reach out to us. But sometimes we think that we have all the answers, we know everything. But think about it this way: as human beings, all the knowledge of the galaxy that exists for all time, from beginning to end, all the knowledge of all humans put together, what do you think that would be in comparison to all the knowledge of the galaxy? Like, how much do we know in comparison to what can be known?
Probably like as much as like we know now.
Yeah, let's say out of 100%, maybe human beings for all time know maybe like 1% of all the knowledge that can be known. What I'm saying is outside of that 1%, the other 99% is where God is. God is outside of that. I mean, there's so much things that we don't know. We never even really understand the depths of our own oceans. There's a
Right,
lot.
so isn't a religion just a way to conveniently explain everything? Because once you have religion to tell you, what do you need to know more? The religion tells you everything.
That's not true because the origins of science started with Christianity. Because here's how it worked. In the olden times with the Catholic monks and things like that, they had time together and they had an ideology, which means that okay, this is God's creation, so we need to study it, we need to learn it, and we have to look at that creation to be able to know more things about ourselves. For instance, they would look at the ants, they would study the ants. Look, they work together, they store food for the winter time, and they do all these kind of things, and we can learn from the ant. God put those things in the ants so that we could learn from them, or we can observe our universe and all kinds of things like that. They realized that the universe was created by God, so they spent time observing it and discerning the meanings of everything. And because of that, that's where science, that's where observation originally came from, the Western world. In the Eastern world, like Buddhism and Hinduism, their wise men and their monks, they looked inward to themselves because they thought that reality was an illusion. Why should they waste their time observing reality when it's all an illusion? It doesn't matter, and all that is real is suffering. So instead, they turn inward to themselves. They look for the redemption in their own self, and because of that, they never made. They did make awesome discoveries, but those discoveries never really got anywhere. Like in China, they invented the watch or time, the clock, like hundreds of years before the West did, but they never really did anything with it because to them it was just a silly thing, like time didn't matter. But to the West, when the monks and stuff, when they got around to inventing the clock, they did it because they believed that they needed to manage their time well so that they could be more honoring to God. It's pretty amazing when you read the history of science. I don't know if you've ever read the history of science before, but it's pretty amazing how they're
Not,
connected.
not in depth, no.
It's pretty interesting. There's a YouTube channel. There's a guy named David Wood. He wrote a
Oh
video,
yeah, I'm familiar with that guy. Yeah.
Atheism, Science. I think there's a video that he did. It's like Atheism, Science, or something. Anyway, he talks about all the great philosophers and people of the like 15th and 16th century and all the origins of science on there. It's pretty neat. But I'm reading a book right now. It's called um, it's called The Book That Made Your World. It's by a guy from India, and he talks about the origins of Western civilization and science. And he talks about a lot of stuff like that. You might like that book. It's pretty neat. Tell you what, you
Yeah.
sound like a very intelligent person. You sound like you think about things a lot very critically, and that's good. I like that. I'm that way myself. That's why I research these things and made my own decisions on it. But since you sound like a reader, but I would like to send you a book if that's okay with you. It's called One Heartbeat Away. Have you heard of it before?
No, I've never heard that book before.
One Heartbeat Away PDF. Um, you can buy it on Amazon. It's like $15, or I could just send you an ebook if you want
Yep.
for free. Do you have an email?
Sure. I think I have the PDF right here already. So.
Oh, you found it. Is it the whole
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Okay, One Heartbeat Away PDF by Mark Cale.
Yep. I got it.
It's one of my favorite books because it talks about some of the things I was talking with you about you today. But the big important thing is like the thing I brought up at the very beginning is what happens after you die. That's the big thing. That's the big question, you know, the origin question. Where do we come from? Where do we go now? That's the big thing. Anyway, I want to encourage you to check it out, read it, and I'll give you my email address. Tell me what you think.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, yeah, I appreciate your time. Hopefully, I didn't step on your toes or anything or make you mad. But
Oh, oh, you're fine.
all right, all right. Well, good talking to you. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Take care.
All right, you too.